Good evening, Reading 521. Ladies, I am here to tell you about our last module. This is module number 5. I changed the title of this module based on, you will see that in the syllabus. I'm just looking back to see what it was. In the syllabus, I had said something about it being the case study analysis and curriculum literacy. I think I'm taking a little bit of a different take than what I had originally written as the title. We are still looking at some curriculum, very much so when we look at the Lucy Calkins controversy, and also 3 different areas that I think are very important coming from our book on best practices in adolescent literacy instruction. So let's start at the top as I try to explain to you what it is that you will be doing this time. This time our learning outcome is to explore and understand instruction using research-proven reading strategies in response to student factors, textual factors, and contextual factors that affect reading comprehension in the literal, inferential, critical, and evaluative levels. So what I want you to think about in this is that I really want you to focus on the contextual factors. And I want you to focus on, again, we're going back to reading comprehension as we think about how everything, of course, does impact reading comprehension. From the different areas that we're talking about in these chapters. So the first chapter is academic language development. I don't think that we addressed that issue earlier, and perhaps I should have put that in the reading comprehension module, but I was afraid of overloading you there. So I'd like you to visit that chapter this time, because I want you to recognize how important it is in relationship to reading across the curriculum. When older readers are starting to become departmentalized, I mean, actually, we start doing that in elementary grades, but it's definitely a part of middle school and high school. And now content area reading becomes even more paramount. It's really everything is about the different subjects. And if we don't have a good, strong understanding of academic vocabulary and the strategies that are needed to teach that, in fact, there's a whole content area class that I'm teaching for the undergraduate, and vocabulary is a key issue. So I want you to visit that chapter to just get a grasp on what some of the research says about reading it across contexts and multiple opportunities for learning in different ways, and the importance of that academic language. The next chapter that I think you'll find really interesting has to do with culturally relevant teaching again, culturally compelling teaching, multimodality, transmediation in an 8th grade classroom. So I thought it would be interesting for you because a lot of you are dealing with upper elementary. Few of you, I don't think, are teaching high school, but because this is a course on older readers and secondary levels of reading, I thought an 8th grade classroom would be a good middle ground to be able to think about multimodality. So you're looking at different modes of literacy, how and transmediation, those are big words. So pay attention to those when you're looking at culturally relevant teaching. And number 3, the last chapter in the book, comes from differentiated literacy instruction for adolescent students. Differentiation, of course, is key. I know you know that, and those of you who are going to become literacy leaders or literacy coaches are definitely going to be involved in helping teachers to differentiate instruction. So I think you will find that chapter very, very compelling. It was really hard to choose because this book is so rich. It has so many things, and I wish we had had time to really just read all of this book, but I thought it would have been a bit heavy. So I'm picking out some chapters that I think you will find particularly interesting. And again, vocabulary, cultural relevance, and differentiation are 3 huge things that we want to think about when we're writing our programs, when we're developing curriculum. So when you become a member of a curriculum writing team or are in a position to influence curriculum development, I think you want to be able to hone in on those three issues, which is why I picked those three chapters. But there's another unit that I want you to think about. Let me see if that actually is sharing correctly. Yes, it did. So this particular this is a submodule that's been developed around Lucy Calkins. I know in discussion with some of you, you are already familiar with Lucy Calkins and you have some opinions about her work. I'm going to tell you that I first became involved with Lucy when I was a bilingual teacher, and she was one of the very first speakers that I ever heard. And she was a keynote speaker of a conference that I had gone to, and I was really, really green. But she was talking about writing instruction, and you'll find in some of the materials that you read about her that her beginning is in teaching writing. And her work on teaching writing was very, very compelling, and it was good, and it's still considered to be very good. When she then evolved into teaching reading, her work became a little bit more controversial, even though she had developed some pretty major units of instruction. I think what happened is that she tried to replicate the reading workshop, much like she had developed the writing workshop, and that's when it became a little bit controversial. And Tim Shanahan and others have something to say about that. So I think you will find this discussion, this controversy, a little bit interesting. Some of you may have experience and you can add your 2 cents based on what you have taught, or maybe you encountered it in your learning in some of your professional development and what you're doing in the classrooms. Some of you may find it interesting to look at the science of teaching reading and its juxtaposition to this position. I want you to think about, so some of the readings that I have in here will touch upon dyslexia and how that has influenced the science of teaching reading. I think you'll also find a discussion at the very end. I added this article on the 3 queuing system. You will know, perhaps you've heard, if you haven't, you should know that it's outlawed. It really is outlawed. We're not allowed to teach it. I'm not teaching you, but I'm not asking you to use the 3 queuing system. If those of you that are familiar with it maybe know it as the miscue analysis, it's related to the miscue analysis, where you see the MSV that has been used a lot in guided reading. So using that approach only in reading instruction is no longer allowed. Instead, we are to use the 4 processing model. So I want you to think about, some of you may be familiar with this and some of you may not. So I put that in there as something that I thought you would find very interesting. If you don't know where it came from with the Goodmans and Ken Goodman's work, I think some of the stuff that has evolved has been misunderstood. So it's interesting to go back to look at the roots. I'm not trying to convince you to do something that science is teaching us is no longer appropriate, but I do want you to understand the roots of where things come so that when you become involved in being able to discuss these things, you know where the origins are and you have a better understanding of all of it put together. So consequently, there's some interesting reading, some podcasts and some things for you to listen to as you work through this controversy on Lucy Calkins' work. So that's what that's all about. Let me close this because I do want to show you one more thing, and that is our Padlet. So let me back up and show you where the Padlet is. I should have had that tab open and I forgot. My apologies for that. So here's our Padlet discussion. You're going to see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. One is, I just want you to weigh in on your thoughts concerning the units of study controversy. I want you to also then put your big takeaways concerning each of these 3 chapters. And then finally, the last thing that I want you to do as you finish up the semester is to summarize your case study right here. You've been working on that case study for a while. The case study is due in that last week of the semester. So I want you to create a really, really brief. I don't want you to knock yourself out. I just want you to summarize in a brief presentation that I want you to narrate for us. Basically build it around the what, so what, and now what. So what was your study about? Just give us some context. Tell us a little bit about your subject, and get us started. What was it about? So what did you do about this student that was struggling in reading? What was your interventions? Tell us your process, your steps, and then now what? What are your conclusions? What are your recommendations? Not necessarily about this student so much. You can certainly talk about that, but I want you to think of it in bigger sense to fit this module that we're talking about. What would you say based on this was research? So when we, as researchers, what we do is to generalize what we have learned in our research, in this case, your case study of this one student. How do you generalize what you learned about the student to teaching older readers, to teaching, most of you did not have adolescent readers, but you did have older readers. So how can you generalize your findings to other teachers who are going to have struggling readers, and that in the upper grades? Consequently, that's your now what. So now what should we know about it? And how would you advise your colleagues? How would you advise other teachers moving forward? And so those are the four things here. There's one thing that I think I should tell you about also. Let's go look through some of the assignments and the dates. So your case study is due May 6th. That's a Monday. That date has been on the calendar for a while. Module 5, addressing programs for older readers, that's the Padlet. That's due on Wednesday, May 8th. And then finally, the very last thing that I want you to do by the very last day of the semester is May 10th. And I want you to go back to your belief statement, the one that you wrote at the very beginning of the semester, and then you submitted. That was the very first thing that you did. And I want you to revise it. I want you to go back and think about, what have you learned? What can you add to your belief statement? Have you grown? Has anything changed? What research can you include in your belief statement that you didn't before to support your claims and your findings? If you haven't changed your opinions about anything and your beliefs remain the same, support them in a richer way than you might have than the first time around. So beef up that belief statement and submit that by Friday on the last day. So I've spread out the due dates of the work that you have to do through the end. So you're going to start with a lot of reading and be posting to the Padlet throughout these next few weeks. Finish up that case study, get it written and submitted, and then finally revise your belief statement. And instead of making the Padlet due on the last day, I put it here on in the middle of the week, simply because it follows, the last thing on it is the case study. So let me know what you need to get through this and finish up in a rich and positive way. You've done some phenomenal work. I've been seeing a lot of posts coming in, so I'll be anxious to read some of the things that you've been posting and on the Padlets, and enjoy this last segment. It's been a pleasure working with all of you, and I hope to see you in the writing project this summer. If not, perhaps I'll see you in Reading 528, where we're really going to dive much more deeply into writing instruction. So let me know how I can help. Have a wonderful next 3 weeks, and I'll be talking to you soon. Bye-bye.